Iran is in the headlines constantly. Conflict, threats, hidden alliances, nuclear ambitions. But few realize that Iran's story was written long before any modern headline, written in the ancient pages of the Bible itself. This is not just the story of a modern nation, but the saga of an empire whose rise, fall, and destiny were laid out thousands of years ago under its ancient name, Persia. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible tracks Persia's path, from humble beginnings to chosen deliverer, to a feared adversary in the final days. Long before Iran was a nation, the story began after the flood. Humanity was given a new beginning through Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From their descendants, the world was repopulated, nations were born, and boundaries were drawn. Among them was Magi, son of Japheth, whose people settled the rugged northern mountains of what is now Iran. Fierce, independent, they were known for their toughness and tribal unity. Alongside them were the descendants of Elam, son of Shem. The Elamites settled the fertile plains of southwestern Iran near the Persian Gulf, carving out a prosperous civilization. The Bible's earliest international war mentions these people. In Genesis 14, 4 eastern kings, including Chedorlaomer of Elam, invaded Canaan, plundering cities and enslaving people, including Lot, the nephew of Abraham. But Abraham refused to stand by. With just 318 trained men, he launched a daring night attack, defeated the Eastern coalition, and rescued Lot. It was a miraculous victory that sent a clear message. No Eastern power, no matter how strong, could stand against the will of God. But Elam did not vanish. Centuries passed. Tribes grew into kingdoms. The Elamites and Medes, descendants of Magi, shared the vast, harsh landscape of ancient Iran. In the north, rugged mountains forged the Medes' character. In the south, Elam prospered in fertile plains. Empires rose and fell around them, but slowly another power emerged. First tribes, then kings, then an empire, Persia. Though pagan, they were never outside God's plan. Through prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, God spoke of Persia's future. Isaiah foretold that Elam and Media would punish Babylon, the empire that destroyed Jerusalem and its temple. God had chosen who would bring Babylon down the united peoples of Iran. But prophecy didn't stop at judgment. God promised he would also use Persia for redemption. More than 150 years before he was born, Isaiah named a pagan king who would become God's anointed instrument, Cyrus. Cyrus would conquer Babylon and set God's people free. This prophecy was fulfilled with astounding precision. Cyrus united the Medes and Persians, forging an empire that stretched from India to the Mediterranean. In 539 BC, his armies diverted the Euphrates River and entered Babylon through its dry riverbed, capturing the city with barely a fight. That very night, Babylon fell, and true to prophecy, Cyrus issued a decree allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Persia wasn't just another conqueror, it became the empire that restored God's people. But Persia's role in prophecy wasn't only about deliverance. The prophet Daniel, taken to Babylon as a teenager, received visions of empires yet to come. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a towering statue, the silver chest and arms represented a united but unequal empire, the Medes and Persians. Daniel saw even more. In a vision of beasts rising from turbulent waters, the second beast was a bear raised on one side, with 3 ribs in its mouth, a symbol of Persia's domination over Media and its great conquests, Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. These visions were fulfilled as Persia expanded relentlessly. Under Cambyses II, son of Cyrus, Persia crossed the Sinai and crushed Egypt, completing the third conquest. Yet Daniel's visions didn't end there. By the Ulai River, he saw a ram with 2 horns, one taller than the other, growing later charging west, north, and south without opposition. The angel explained, the ram represents the kings of Media and Persia. Again, the prophecy matched history perfectly. But Persia's dominance was never meant to last forever. Daniel also saw a swift goat from the west, with a single prominent horn that struck the ram and shattered its power. This prophecy pointed to Alexander the Great, who would rise from Greece to conquer Persia at lightning speed. Though Daniel didn't know Alexander's name, the vision was unmistakable. Persia, the greatest empire of its age, would fall to an even more ferocious power. Even so, Persia's legacy wasn't only war and conquest. The Bible tells the remarkable story of Esther, a Jewish orphan who became queen of Persia. When the wicked Haman plotted genocide against the Jews, Esther risked her life to expose him to the king. Her courage turned what was meant to be a day of destruction into a day of deliverance. The Persian Empire, which once threatened Israel, became its refuge, its fortress, and its shield. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Rome took center stage. Persia faded from biblical narrative, but not from God's plan. When Jesus was born, Matthew's gospel tells of wise men who came from the east, seeking the newborn king. The word used is Magi, a term for the scholarly priestly caste of Persia. These were learned men, skilled in astronomy and ancient texts, very likely including the prophecies of Daniel, who had served in their courts centuries earlier. When they saw the star, they recognized the sign. They journeyed across deserts to honor the Messiah, bringing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Once again, Persia was there, not as conqueror, but as worshiper. But Persia's story in the Bible doesn't end at the manger. Prophets like Ezekiel foretold a darker destiny. In the visions of Gog and Magog in the final days, Persia is named as one of the nations in the coalition rising against Israel. Ezekiel 38 lists Persia alongside Cush and Put, forming an alliance that will surge against God's people like a storm. Yet they will fail. God promises direct intervention, earthquakes, fire, confusion among armies. His glory will shine in judgment, but even this judgment is not the final word. Buried in Jeremiah's prophecy about Elam is a promise few remember. God says, "I will shatter the bow of Elam, the mainstay of their might. Yet in the last days I will restore the fortunes of Elam. Judgment, then restoration. Wrath, then mercy." Persia's biblical arc is humanity's arc, created, fallen, judged, redeemed. A pagan empire chosen to free God's people, humbled in its pride, but never abandoned. Even in the final days, the door remains open. For the prophets say the nations will one day stream to Jerusalem to worship the Lord, and perhaps among them will stand Elam. So when we look at modern Iran, with its alliances, its threats, its defiance, we should remember its story is ancient, woven into the Bible's pages. And while the headlines speak of danger and judgment, prophecy also whispers of hope, because even after all that has happened, God has left room for redemption.